Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission here, as always, is to take your sources, your articles, your research, your notes, and just cut right through all the noise to give you the strategies you can use, like right now.
And today, we are tackling a problem that I think everyone has felt. It's that dreaded word block.
Yes.
It's that moment, that really frustrating moment when a conversation just stops.
Completely stalls.
Because that perfect English word, a word you've learned, it's in your brain somewhere.
Yeah.
It's too far away. You can't quite get to it.
It's like standing in front of a locked door, and you know the key is in your pocket, but you just can't find it.
That's a perfect analogy.
Okay, let's really break that feeling down because it's so personal and it's full of anxiety. Our sources describe it perfectly. You're in the flow of a conversation, everything's going smoothly, and then bam, it hits.
The world stops.
The world stops, your brain screeches to a halt, and worst of all, the conversation stops. You've officially frozen.
And that freeze is just so damaging because the anxiety kicks in.
Right?
And that just makes it even harder to remember the word.
It's a vicious cycle.
It really is. And the material we looked at was clear that this even happens to really fluent, almost native speakers, maybe with, very specific words or in a high-pressure meeting.
Right.
But for anyone who's still building their fluency, that feeling of reaching for a word and just getting air,
Yeah.
it's so demotivating. It makes you feel like you've gone backwards.
Like you've regressed, even when you haven't. So whether you're getting ready for a huge business meeting or just trying to keep up with friends, our mission today is simple. We have pulled out 5 specific, practical, and immediately usable strategies.
These are pulled directly from established verbal techniques, from linguistic research. You could use these the second you feel that freeze coming on.
This is your toolkit.
Exactly. It's your operational toolkit. These are shortcuts to keep the conversation moving, even when your brain's filing system has a temporary glitch. We're going to give you the strategies, but also, the thinking behind when and how to use them best.
And we're going to start with understanding why the block happens in the first place. And then we'll get into what our sources call the most fun part.
The fun part, yeah.
The informal instant solution, which involves a lot of really wonderful made-up words.
So let's get into it. Why does this block happen? The main idea, the one that comes up again and again, the material, is this concept of rustiness.
Rustiness. It's such a great word. It sounds a little depressing, like it's your fault.
Exactly. And it just means you haven't been practicing enough. You haven't exercised those specific neural pathways recently. And so you get this little regression in your ability to pull up words.
But let's look at what that actually means cognitively, because I think that's a key distinction.
Right. Language isn't just about storing a word, which is called encoding. It's about being able to access it really quickly. That's retrieval.
And when we freeze, we think the word is just gone, right? But for most learners, especially intermediate or advanced, the word is still there. It's in the filing cabinet.
Exactly. The problem is that the little index card system your brain uses is just temporarily jammed. The path to that word hasn't been used in a while, so it's a bit overgrown.
That happens to native speakers too. If you don't use a specific technical term for a few years, you might struggle to find it.
Precisely. It's a retrieval failure, not an encoding failure. And all the techniques we're about to talk about are designed to just bypass that blocked path.
Which brings us to the most fun bypass of all. Strategy 1. Using placeholder names. The Informal Toolkit.
I love this section.
Me too, because it's such a perfect reflection of how native speakers handle their own memory gaps. These aren't dictionary words, but they are so common in real conversation.
They're basically the non-real words you use to stand in for a name or an object that has just vanished from your mind.
Okay, but before we get into the actual words, we have to put up a huge warning sign.
The biggest warning sign, yes. This is all for informal, casual speech.
The sources were so clear on this.
Absolutely. You would never, ever use these in like an academic paper or on an exam or in a really formal business meeting.
Although the sources did point out that context is everything, right? It depends on the corporate vibe.
Oh, for sure. A tech startup might be throwing around thingamajig all day. A big law firm, probably not.
Not so much, but for 90% of your daily chats with friends, with family, colleagues, in a casual setting, these are lifesavers.
Okay, so let's start with the first group, the thing extensions. These are almost always for objects.
And the most basic one of all, thingy.
Yes, thingy. It's usually for a small physical object when you can't remember the name. The example in the sources was perfect. The doctor gave me a thingy to help me with my stress.
and you immediately know what they mean. A stress ball, a fidget spinner, some kind of little gadget. You don't need the exact word.
Right, you've used thingy as a temporary stand-in, and the conversation just keeps going.
Okay, next up is thingamajig. This one's a bit more versatile.
It is. The material notes, it can refer to objects, but also sometimes to people.
So for an object, you might be talking about a new kitchen gadget and say, it's got this little rotating thingamajig inside that flips the food over.
Perfect. It sounds casual, but the meaning is 100% clear. And for a person, it's a bit more like, did you talk to Thingamajig from the sales department about that report?
It signals that you know who you're talking about and you expect the other person does too, but the name is just gone.
And almost exactly the same as Thingamajig is Thingamabob.
So if I can't remember the word for, say, a specific kind of makeup brush, I could say, she used this thingamabob to put on the foundation.
And the listener understands the function, which is the whole point. What's important with all the thing words is that they signal something isn't, super important.
Right. You wouldn't say the president gave a speech about the thingamajig.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The topic is too serious. But for everyday items, gadgets, they're perfect.
Okay, so moving on to the what extensions. These get a little more specific. And the first one is a classic, watchamacallit.
Oh, a very popular one. And the sources say this one is almost always for things, not people.
Right. So you might say, hey, while you were at the store, did you remember to pick up a watchamacallit?
And that could be anything, a can of soup, a light bulb, anything. It relies on the listener knowing the context, but the question itself doesn't stop.
It's just efficient verbal shorthand.
Then there's what's its name. This one's more balanced. It can be for people or for things.
So you could ask, did you see any good what's its names on that streaming service last night? Referring to, like, movie titles.
Exactly. And now we get to the ones specifically for people, which is when you know the gender but the name is gone.
What's your name and what's his name?
The instant, safe, non-offensive fix.
But this category also has the two riskiest ones, which we need to be really careful with.
Yes. What's your face and what's his face?
This is where we need to dig in a bit. Our sources said that native speakers absolutely use these. One person even said their whole family uses them constantly.
They do, but they can carry a lot of social baggage.
How so?
Well, they work as a placeholder. Did you see what's his face at the party? But they can sound a little dismissive, maybe even a bit disrespectful to the person whose name you forgot.
So for a learner, using it is a gamble. It could land perfectly fine, or it could really surprise or even offend the person you're talking to.
It's a high-risk, low-reward situation. So let me turn that around. If what's your face is risky, what's the safe alternative in that moment of panic?
That's a great question. When you're talking about people, the safest bet is probably to switch to a different strategy entirely, like strategy 3 or 4. Ah, so you describe them.
Exactly. Instead of reaching for a risky placeholder, you just say, did you talk to the person who runs the marketing team? Or did you see him? You know, the one in the blue jacket.
So you're trading the shortness of the placeholder for social safety.
That's a really smart trade-off. Okay, and finally, we have the do extensions, which really show how regional or even family-specific these words can be.
Right. The sources pointed out that some families never use these, while for others, they're part of daily life. It just proves you learn these from being around people, not from a textbook.
And the main example is duda.
Which is mostly for people, but sometimes things. The key thing with duda is that you're assuming the other person knows exactly who or what you mean.
There was a great example of this. Someone says, oh, duda got engaged.
And the person saying that fully expects the listener to know immediately who duda is. It's a shortcut for, our mutual friend whose name I just blanked on.
And its partner word, doodad, is usually for objects, often small things, little gadgets. Can you look in the drawer and see if there are any doodads for the camera?
So what does this all mean for you, the learner? Strategy 1 is your emergency kit, your verbal first aid.
Right. When you feel that block, you don't panic. You just grab the right informal placeholder, a thingy, a what sits, a doodad, and keep going.
It buys you a few seconds and keeps the conversation alive. But is there a risk here? If you get too comfortable using thingy, do you stop trying to learn the real word?
That is the crucial counterpoint. It's a great tool for a crisis, but you can't live on it.
So it's a band-aid, not a cure.
Exactly. If you use a placeholder, you should treat that as a homework assignment for later. The conversation is saved, yes, but the learning isn't done until you look up that word. And that brings us perfectly to the actual cure, the long game.
Right. So we've covered the fire extinguisher for the immediate problem. Now we need to talk about, the preventative maintenance plan. Strategy 2.
This isn't a quick fix for the moment you freeze. This is the long-term strategy to make sure you freeze less and less often. And it's all about daily consistency.
If strategy 1 is about dealing with retrieval failure, strategy 2 is about making sure those retrieval pathways are always clear.
It's the only real antidote to that feeling of rustiness.
And we said rustiness is that slight step back you take when you don't practice. So daily engagement is the way to reverse that.
And memory science is really clear on this. For learning a language, frequent, short bursts of practice are so much better than one long session once a week.
So like 30 minutes every day is better than 3 hours on a Sunday.
Much better.
Right.
It's about something called memory consolidation. When you learn a word, you create a faint path in your brain. If you don't revisit it for a week, that path starts to fade.
But if you come back the next day and the day after,
You're turning that path into a highway. Daily practice tells your brain, hey, this information is important. Move it from short-term to long-term storage.
and that's where structured practice, like taking regular classes, really helps. Because it's not just about listening or reading, it's about active output.
Exactly. The material really emphasized the power of regular classes, even short ones, because they force you into active recall. You have to produce the language.
Which is the exact skill that breaks down when you have word block.
Right. And the sources also pointed to the importance of the learning environment. They mentioned that small class sizes, say, an average of 3 students, are incredibly effective.
Because there's nowhere to hide.
There's nowhere to hide. In a class of 20, you can just sit back. In a group of 3, you have to talk. Your speaking time goes way up, and you're forced to move from just recognizing words to actually using them.
It's like a safe, high-pressure training ground.
It is. And the results aren't just about test scores. Learners who do this consistently say the biggest benefit is overcoming the fear of speaking.
Which is so often the fuel for word block in the first place.
Yes. Daily practice slowly separates the act of speaking from the feeling of fear. We also saw that this leads to real-world success, like people getting new jobs. Because in a job, confidence and the ability to keep a conversation flowing are often more important than perfect grammar.
So the big recommendation is this sort of linguistic sprint model, right? Committing to daily practice for a set amount of time, say a few months.
Exactly. That consistent engagement just lubricates all those pathways to your memory. It dramatically lowers the chance that you'll even need to reach for a thingy in the first place.
So strategy 1 is your crisis management tool. Strategy 2 is your long-term prevention plan. You need both.
Absolutely. You use the placeholders to survive the freeze and daily practice to make sure those freezes become rare.
Okay, so let's get back to that moment of crisis. Because even with daily practice, it's still going to happen sometimes. We've established that the freeze often happens because we're trying too hard to find the one perfect word.
And that's where strategy 3 comes in. It's incredibly simple. Describe the word using simple or generic terms.
The core idea here is to prioritize conversational flow over being perfect.
Ruthlessly prioritize it. You're aiming for good enough communication, not linguistic poetry. The problem is that learners often search for that very specific, complex word. And in doing so, they create that horrible, awkward silence.
So the advice is just let the perfect word go.
Let it go. Your brain's priority needs to switch from what is the noun to what's the simplest phrase I know that gets the job done. You can look up the fancy word later.
Okay, so the classic example, you can't remember the word puppy.
You just say baby dog.
It sounds a little childish maybe, but 100% of people will know what you mean.
It's not overly correct, as the sources put it, but it works instantly. The conversation continues.
Or if you can't remember the professional title pediatrician,
You say a doctor for children.
the listener gets the information they need. This strategy works because you stop trying to access a blocked memory and instead start using the vocabulary you do have access to.
And that leads us right into strategy 4, which is similar, but even more powerful, especially for more complex ideas.
Which is, describe the purpose or use.
So if a simple 2-word phrase like baby dog isn't enough, you focus on what the thing does or what the person's role is. This is so effective because we understand things by their function.
This is a great distinction. Strategy 3 is for simple nouns. Strategy 4 is for things where the function is the definition.
Let's use an example. Say you can't remember the word thermostat. With strategy 3, you might just say the heating thing. It's a bit vague.
Right.
But with strategy 4, you describe its function. It's the little box on the wall that measures the temperature and controls the heating.
That's crystal clear. You've perfectly defined it without using the name.
Or think about an object like a pencil sharpener. If the word is gone, you just describe the action. Can you pass me that thing that's used for making pencils pointed?
Or for a job title, you forget the word librarian.
You describe the role. They're the person who works in the place where you can borrow books. It's instant. It's clear.
So the real mental shift here for the listener is that when the word block hits, you have to force your brain to stop trying to retrieve a label.
Yes. You have to force it to switch from retrieval mode to description mode.
And that description mode uses all the simple, high-frequency words you already know and are very unlikely to forget.
So you have to do this quick mental check. Is the missing word a simple thing? Use strategy 3, simple terms. Is it a complex object, a process, a job? Use strategy 4, functional description. If you can master that switch, you'll never be stuck again.
Okay, that brings us to our fifth and final immediate strategy. Strategy 5 is to use approximations.
This is a little different from just describing. This is about softening the description and comparing the unknown thing to a known thing. And you do this using what we call hedging phrases.
Hedging, I like that. It's like you're being cautious with your language.
Exactly. You're basically telling your speaking partner, okay, this isn't a perfect definition, but it's close. It also shows that you're aware of the gap in your knowledge, which is a good social signal.
And the key phrases here are really simple ones to memorize.
They are. Things like "san can curry," "stung." It's like, it's sort of, it's kind of. Or you can combine them. It's kind of like, it's sort of like.
So you're basically giving a verbal disclaimer before you describe it.
Yes. You're saying, I don't have the exact word, but I know something similar that you can use as a reference point.
The example from the source material was about clothing. If you can't remember the word jumpsuit.
You use an approximation. You say, it's kind of like a dress, but with trousers as well.
That's perfect. You anchor the unknown item, the jumpsuit, to a known item, the dress, and then you just add the key difference. The listener can instantly picture it.
And now we get to the really powerful part. The shared feature of strategies 3, 4, and 5. They don't just save the conversation in the moment.
They create a learning opportunity.
They create a learning loop. Because you have just described the item or concept so clearly, it is almost certain that your speaking partner now knows the word you're looking for.
And they'll give it to you.
They'll supply the missing word. And that moment is so valuable for learning. The word they give you is now super memorable because it's attached to this little moment of tension and successful communication.
So a moment of failure actually becomes a moment of success.
Exactly. And if you want to be really proactive about it, you don't even have to wait for them to guess. You can set this up at the start of a conversation.
How do you do that?
You just say something like, hey, by the way, I'm working on my English, so if I use the wrong word or I have to describe something, please feel free to just tell me the right word. I won't be offended. I'd actually appreciate the help.
That is so smart on so many levels. First, it just lowers your own anxiety immediately. You've given yourself permission to not be perfect.
And second, it taps into basic human psychology. People genuinely like to help. They enjoy being the one with the answer. It turns the conversation from, a test into a collaboration.
From a performance into a partnership.
Yes. And the other benefit, which is subtle but so important, is shared laughter. It can be really hard to make a joke in a new language. But if you describe something as the little electric doodad that heats water for tea, and your friend laughs and says, you mean the kettle.
That shared laugh just makes everyone
It
relax.
creates a real connection. So by using these descriptive strategies, you not only keep the conversation moving, you actively invite correction, and you strengthen your vocabulary for the future. You turn a failure into a win.
Which is really what fluency is all about. Not perfection, but resilient communication.
Okay, so let's tie this all together. Let's do a quick recap of the 5 critical tools we've gone through today for fighting word block.
First up, strategy 1, the informal toolkit. Your placeholder names, your thingies, thingamajigs, watchamacallits. Use them to instantly fill a gap so the conversation doesn't break. But just be careful with what surface.
Right. Second, the long game, strategy 2. Daily consistency. You have to fight that rustiness with short, consistent daily practice. That keeps your retrieval pathways clear, especially if you can practice in small, interactive groups.
Then we have the 2 descriptive powerhouses. Strategy 3. Describe using simple terms, like baby dog for puppy. That's for your basic nouns. And strategy 4, describe the purpose or use. That's for more complex things, like the thing that makes pencils pointed.
And finally, strategy 5. Use approximations. Soften your descriptions with phrases like, it's kind of like, or it's sort of like. That allows you to compare what you don't know to what you do know, and it invites a really smooth correction from your partner.
So the biggest takeaway here for you, the learner, has to be this. Fluency is not about knowing every single word. It's not about perfect grammar. True fluency is about your ability to handle those gaps when they appear. It's about keeping the conversation moving and keeping your anxiety down. These 5 techniques mean you never have to totally freeze again.
And when we started this, we talked about how informal language, especially those placeholders like duda or thingamajig, they don't follow normal grammar rules. Their use is all about context. It depends on your family, your region, your social circle.
You don't learn them in a classroom. You just absorb them by being around people. And that makes informal language really tricky to learn.
So our final thought for you to take away is this. Think about your own native language. How many little phrases, slang words, or placeholders do you use every single day without even thinking about it? Words that would completely confuse an outsider.
And once you realize that, how does it change how you approach learning informal English?
Maybe the key to getting past that intermediate plateau isn't just about learning more formal rules. Maybe it's about actively hunting for those little contextual variations, the doodads and the thingamajigs, that connect you to how people actually speak.
Because true fluency might just be the mastery of the gap. So go out there and don't be afraid to use a watchamacallit when you need to. Thanks for diving deep with us.
Until next time.